Hello, my name is Nomisa Nambusi. Welcome to my channel, where we talk about life, passion, and hustle. This channel is aimed for those seeking for authenticity in how they fulfill their life purpose, looking for confidence in building a life of passion, and for those looking to build lasting African legacies, especially during times of renewal and rebirth, which we also call change. Last week we had our first, not last week, the week before last, we had our first episode 1 of season 1, of which season 1 is focused on building resilience during times of change. And as we know, change is a part of our life. It's a constant, it's the only constant in life. So this episode, which is episode 2, this week we're focusing on looking at the emotions, the thoughts, and the actions that we go through when we are faced with change situations. The process of change is a mind, body, and soul experience. In order for you to be able to experience a positive change, you must have gone through a mindset shift. You must have gone through a shift in terms of your physical body, and you must have gone through a shift in terms of how you do things. Hence, in this particular episode, we're looking into what are the thoughts and what are the emotions and what are the actions that are involved in a change process. First, I would like to recall a quote I mentioned last time, that your thoughts become your reality. The mind regulates everything that happens in the body, essentially, and in the soul as well. It regulates our actions. Therefore, the thoughts that we have in our minds are determinants of how we get to manifest in our lives. If you're experiencing positive thoughts, in most instances, that means that even your manifestations will not be positive, because your mind is programmed to manifest those negative thoughts that are going through your mind. But then again, thoughts are something that is intangible. It happens within us, and every second, in every millisecond, we have millions of thoughts going through our minds. How do we make sure that we have the right thoughts in our mind? The one sure way of getting to understand your thought process is journaling. If not a person that journals, the easiest way is doodling. What is doodling? When you have a pen and a paper in front of you and you literally just start letting your hand flow in terms of whatever comes up, if it's words, if it's drawings, whatever comes up in your mind, your hand will write. After you've given yourself, let's say, a specific period of time of doodling, then when you reflect back at your doodle, you are able to trace back the thought patterns that are in your mind. If you're not comfortable with doodling, or perhaps you're a journal person, then get a journal where you have a specific time frame in your day where you can start writing your thoughts. Not writing in order to be right, but rather just getting all of those thoughts out of your mind into a platform where you can just reflect back on and understand what are you thinking about. Because now we are in the digital era, I've found some really awesome apps that I use to journal, such as Diaro, which is basically a digital diary. And another awesome one is 750 words. It costs money, but it was great to use when I started using it in the trial version, because once you journal, then the app brings back to you a report on what you wrote about, how you were feeling, what are the emotions that are coming through. And so it kind of gives you an analysis of your journal prompt in terms of what came up in that particular journal. It wasn't expensive, it's just that at this point in time, I really cannot afford to be paying for much, so I could not carry on with it. So I had to stick with my Diary app, which I've been using for a while. I've been using it for many years, and it I love it because whenever I find myself reflecting back into journal entries that I've entered a few years ago, I always get taken aback. I get amazed at what has been going through my mind, and some you find that they are basically what I'm living now, because at the time they were just thoughts, and now they've become actions and they've become my life. So I would definitely encourage you to start journaling in order to understand your thought process. Because if you're not happy with what's going through your mind, what you're thinking about, chances are you're not happy with your life, which is what propels most of us to start initiating change in our lives. We're not happy with the way things are. We want to see a different future. We want to be more aligned with our dreams, our purpose. And so we set off onto this journey of change. And in order for us to be successful in this journey of change, we need to be very clear. Clarity starts with the mind first. Get to understand your thought process, and then you'll be able to understand a whole lot of other things that will come after that, including the emotions and the actions. Specifically, the emotions and the actions, because they are mostly driven by thought. The last bit I'd like to talk about in this particular episode on the thoughts is self-talk. The conversations that we have with ourselves, which mostly determine how we really feel about ourselves. They can be positive when we're encouraging and motivating ourselves and, giving ourselves pep talks. And they can be negative as well, when we're being too harsh on ourselves, when we're being self-judgmental, when we're experiencing low self-esteem moments and so forth. It's quite important that we understand how we have those one-on-one conversations with ourselves, because at the end of the day, we need to keep a good balance in terms of how we talk to ourselves, because what we tell ourselves becomes who we are and what we manifest in terms of how people see us. I know that we've only touched on high level. However, we cannot go through everything in this particular video. More content will come as time goes by that will go deeper into the thoughts, and at this point we're really just introducing the concepts and we'll unpack them as we go along. Then moving on to emotions. Before we get into the matter, I would like to just mention that it took me a while to record episode 2. It was supposed to have been recorded last week, but it didn't because I was in my emotions. And one thing I've learned with myself is the fact that I block out my emotions. It's very difficult for me to process emotions. I take time to process emotions. So it's actually even talking about emotional matters is not something that is fun for me. And for that reason, I kept putting off doing this video. However, we're on it now, and I've actually gone through a few tried and tested processes that I normally get myself into whenever I'm feeling an emotional block, so we're good to roll. That being said, what are emotions? So, what are emotions? Imagine this. You're having a great day. You're so ecstatic, you're happy, things are going great, you're in a celebration, and then the next thing the phone rings and you answer the phone and someone tells you of your loved one's passing, and automatically you go from happy, ecstatic to surprised and sad within a few seconds. That is what emotion is. There's a lot of explanations or definitions that you can get on emotion. The one that resonated with me is the one that explains emotions as a complex state of feelings that result in physical and psychological changes that influence your thoughts and your behaviors. What are emotions? So, the definition that resonates with me the most is the one that defines emotions as a complex state of feelings that result in physical and psychological changes that influence thought and behavior. In most instances, we express our emotions through physical bodily expressions. Like, for example, when you're happy, your face will be relaxed, you'll be smiling, and when you're sad, your face will be long and not as small, and when you're angry, you'll be angry and fuming, and your body is tense and blood is boiling, and those are all emotions. Psychologists have defined emotions, and there's one particular psychologist, Robert Plutchik. I don't know how to pronounce that word, Plutchik. He defined a wheel of emotions, which is made up of a number of emotions. If you look at this wheel, you will see that there's a range of emotions from light ones into really intense ones. But in a nutshell, they can be grouped into 6 groups of emotions, being happiness, sadness, fear, anger, disgust, and surprise. Obviously, there's different ranges of these 6 types of emotions, from a very strong sense of happiness to a mild happiness. So all of those different levels, they have their names, from serenity, joy, ecstasy, acceptance, trust, admiration, fear, terror, apprehension. They vary depending on the degree of the severity of the emotion. And we express them through our physical body. So, are emotions good or bad? We tend to get that saying, you're being emotional. People say that to us a lot. Emotions are neither good nor bad. They're just emotions. They're there, They're part of the body's way of expressing and telling you how you feel. Also, they don't last forever. You may be happy now. It doesn't mean that you'll be happy all the time, or you may be happy in the morning. It doesn't mean that you'll be happy in the evening as well. They can be short-lived. Though there may be emotions that may linger for a while longer than a day. Like, for example, when you're sad and the sadness goes on for a week or longer. In most instances, those are the times when we need to seek help to get us out of that sad emotional state into a different emotional state of happiness and so forth. Do we always have to act on our emotions? not always. Though it's important that we acknowledge them and we feel them. We recognize, we acknowledge, and we feel them. But we don't always have to act on them. Why? Because sometimes when we're acting just based on emotions, then we may be acting in irrational ways. That's when most times people will say, you're being too emotional. Basically what they're saying is you're not acting or thinking with your rational mind, but rather with your emotions. And the thing about acting with emotions is that when that emotion has gone away, you may not necessarily be happy with your actions. Which is why it's important to not act immediately when you're feeling the emotion, but rather take time out and reflect on that emotion before you actually act on it, so that you make sure that you apply your rational, logical mind. Emotions are not facts. They're really just how you're feeling, how you're experiencing the situation. Not necessarily the fact that how you experience the situation is facts about the situation. Emotions may feel like truth, but they may not always be truth. Because truth is fact, and sometimes your emotions are based on how you feel, not necessarily on the fact of the situation. Can you get rid of emotions? Yeah, we try. We try doing that by numbing the emotion, burying it somewhere, but you cannot really remove it or get rid of it. It's important. Did you know that your emotions are more powerful than your thoughts? Yes, emotions are far more powerful than thoughts because emotions influence your thoughts, and they don't just influence your thoughts, they also influence your behaviors. And the most powerful of all emotions is fear. And if you know anything about change, is we always talk about how whenever we're resisting change, most instances we're resisting because of fear. And that fear can manifest in self-sabotage. When you're doing everything in your favor to hold yourself back because you are too scared of doing the thing that you know you need to do, even though your rational mind knows that you need to do this, it's good for you, but your emotions, the particular emotion being fear, does not let you act in the manner in which you should. So we've spoken so much about emotions. Yeah? What triggers emotions? Situations in life can trigger emotions. And in a lot of times you'll find that emotional triggers may be related to specific incidents that may have happened long in the past, that which whenever they are triggered in the present, we find ourselves being trapped in the feelings and emotions that we experienced the first time that happened. For example, if you are a person that was always, for example, if you grew up in a household where as a child you were not allowed to play outside with other kids, you had to always be in the yard and you had to play where your parents can see you. Fast forward, you're now an adult, you have your own kids who are not allowed to go play outside with other kids on the street. They're only allowed to play within the yards, and you've actually gone the extra mile and made sure they have all the swings and jungle gyms and everything that they need to play with within the yard. And then you go and visit your friend, and whilst you are there, your children's friends are used to playing on the street, and the minute they get out of the gate, towing your kids along, you get into a fit. You literally screaming at the children, "Yay! Where are you going? Don't get out of that gate. Don't go into the streets," and so forth and so forth. At that point in time, you're literally ruining your children's day, because now they can't play with other kids who are playing on the street. And yet in this environment where you are, all the kids are playing on the street. But for you, you're still being triggered by the fact that when you grew up, you couldn't play on the streets. And whenever you played on the streets, you would get a hiding. And that becomes your trigger. It's important to identify your triggers so that you can understand why you are triggered by that, and maybe deal with the underlying issues that are related to that trigger. If you don't identify your triggers, you will consistently be triggered by situations in life, and your response to those situations will always be related to how you feel about that particular trigger, which may not be relevant in that particular situation in that current part of your life. Recognize your emotions. Identify your triggers. You use a journal to identify triggers. You can meditate, you can reflect, but basically it's the process of going back inside, going within, to ask yourself questions. What am I triggered by? Why am I being triggered by this? What can I do about it? In the process of doing that reflection work, it's then that you'll be able to start programming your mind and your body to start reacting differently to situations, instead of reacting in the same manner that you did based on when you're being triggered. It's important to familiarize yourself with your emotions. It's called getting to know yourself. Self-awareness is important, especially the emotional awareness, because once you get to know your emotional sense of being, then you're able to regulate your thoughts and you're able to regulate your actions. How do you regulate your emotions? When you're experiencing right now, you are in a fit, you are so angry. How do you regulate your emotions? I once found myself in a psychiatric clinic called Akiso, and some of the techniques that I learned there were life-changing, and I still use them even today. The one particular one I'd like to refer to right now is the 3Ds, which is delay, distract, decide. So, delay, not to say don't act at all, but rather delay acting on that emotion immediately. Give yourself time to reflect on it. Give yourself time to apply your logical, rational mind before you act. Distract. If you're experiencing an emotion that is overwhelming, the best way to actually regulate that emotion is you distract yourself with an activity that will trigger a different type of emotion. If, for example, you are sad, then you wanna do something that you know will bring some sense of joy to you, even if it's just short-lived, but rather that moment to take yourself out of that sad moment, or sad emotion rather, into a different set of emotion. That way you are able to reflect back on that emotion without being in it. you know. The third D is decide. You decide before you act, you decide on the advantages of your actions based on how you want to act, disadvantages, your ultimate goals, and why do you want to change. You use these 3 Ds, especially specifically when you find yourself trapped in an destructive edge. You're experiencing an emotion and you want to engage yourself in a destructive edge. You know very well that what you want to do will be destructive. That's when you step into the 3D mode, where you delay the action, you distract yourself, and you decide. Decision being, you look at the advantages of acting, disadvantages of acting, the ultimate goals of what you want to achieve, and why you want to change how you want to behave and react to the emotion. So we've spoken a bit much about emotions today. What I'd like to leave you with is a reflective exercise which covers both the thought and emotion, specifically being journaling. I'd like you to start a journal prompt. Do it for a week. You can use a book if you prefer to be a book person, or you can check out one of the apps I've mentioned earlier, Diaro, which is essentially, there's a free version that you can download, or you can also use 750 words, which obviously I've mentioned it has those perks of being able to analyze your journal entries and pull out those emotions and those thoughts and give you a summary of what your experience is in that journal prompt. Start journaling. Reflect on your thoughts. Reflect on how you're feeling as you're writing those thoughts. And start picking out what are the trends that are coming up in terms of your thought process. Where is your mind at? What are the trends that are coming up in terms of your emotions? How are you feeling? And then you start understanding and unpacking. Are you comfortable with where your mind and your emotions are at? If you are not, where would you like them to be? And when you've understood that, what is it that you can do that is within your control to change your thoughts and to regulate your emotions? Please go ahead and feel free to drop your comments on your journal experience in the comment section. I would like to hear more about your experience. Over and above that, if there's anything that I have not covered in this particular short episode on emotions that you'd like me to unpack in further episodes, please feel free to drop a comment in the comment section. I'd like to unpack that as we record more videos as time goes by. I'm Ncumisa Nomnambusi. This is a pleasure for me to record these videos. In the process of recording these videos, it gives me an opportunity to actually reflect on my own thought processes and my own emotions. And also it kind of gives me an opportunity to share my experiences. And I don't know if I've mentioned this. Most of the stuff that I'm sharing with you is learnings that I got through my own life. Some through when I went to a psychiatric clinic because I was so overwhelmed. You know, at the heart of overwhelm, it's usually overwhelm because of emotional overwhelm. when there's so much going on in your life and you can't even think straight anymore, you're experiencing all different types of emotions at the same time, to the point where you don't know what to do anymore. At that time in my life, I was still fortunate in life to have medical aid that could cover my costs as I got some mind, body, and soul healing. But these days, I don't have that anymore. And because I don't have that anymore, I still go back to my old work that I did at that institution. I still also go into the work that I used to do when I was still a professional change coach in corporate environments. And through reviewing all of that work, I always find something that will help me through the challenges I'm experiencing. Why? Because these aspects are aspects that are part of our daily lives. Changes every day. Today it's this that's changing, tomorrow it's something else that's changing. And every time all of these changes are happening, they require a lot from us as individuals. Hence, it's important to build your change resilience for you to be able to see these things as they're coming and not feel overwhelmed, because you have your toolkit somewhere that you can whip out, and it will help you to cope, and it will help you guide you in terms of how you can manage these situations. That being said, thank you very much for tuning in. I will see you again in the next episode. Have a good one.
I keep a photograph in which we were in love.